very excited to be here today with Bill Reichert, the VC at Garage Technology Ventures. Bill, tell us how you got started. Garage Ventures has been around for quite a bit of time, and would love to hear more about the team, how you got started, your investment thesis. Tell us more.
Well, actually, in spite of the fact that Garage has been around a long time, I've spent most of my career as an entrepreneur. And so after 4 startups, I decided, wouldn't it be fun to get on the other side of this? And so I got together with Guy Kawasaki and a few other people around the idea of creating a venture capital firm that was designed for the benefit of entrepreneurs. That was one of our founding theses, because if you've ever been an entrepreneur, you can appreciate it doesn't always feel like venture capital firms are designed for the benefit of entrepreneurs. So we decided to be a different kind of venture firm, to be very outreach oriented, to be very educationally oriented, to help support entrepreneurs from the very beginning, hence Garage. 2 guys in a garage, 2 gals in a garage, guy and a gal, whatever the case may be. Focus on helping entrepreneurs from the very beginning.
Very, very good. And you've made some very successful investments. Tell us how you pick investments. What strikes a chord with you?
Well, I tell you, you don't know how much of it is luck and how much of it is deep insight. And I'd like to believe it's deep insight, but sometimes it's just luck. But so we were fortunate to bump into the founding team of Pandora very early on. And so we were the first investors in Pandora. Bumped into the founders, actually they pounded on our door, of a company called Left Hand Networks, team that invented virtualized storage. And have been very fortunate to have the opportunity to meet a number of different entrepreneurs. And then the question is, why did we invest in these guys? And so a lot of VCs, they talk about team, technology, and traction. For us, what we particularly focus on is, do these guys or gals, whatever the case may be, do they have some unbelievable unfair advantage that's going to give them some sustainable competitive advantage long enough that they can achieve escape velocity? So what that means is we tend to focus on deep technology, novel technology, and we have tended to stay away from things that are more consumer facing, where the value proposition is a little bit more subjective.
Okay, I get it. And so what gets you excited about a pitch? I know you talk about the wow factor. Tell us more about what that is.
Yeah, the challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs is simply, at the most basic level, being clear about what it is you're doing. And there are some really amazing technologies out there and some brilliant entrepreneurs, but we wouldn't know because it's so hard to understand what it is that their business idea is. And so, I keep trying to encourage entrepreneurs to make sure that they appreciate how important it is to be clear at the beginning. And then the other piece of it, of course, is they've got to say something that makes you go, wow, that's incredible. And the challenge a lot of entrepreneurs have is that they're so in the weeds of what they're doing every day, they lose sort of the high perspective of what's so amazing about what they're doing. And that's what causes us to get excited. Not sort of a technology description of a market opportunity. Nobody gets excited about that. It's something that's just amazing, that's different, that's unique, that can really make a dent in the universe.
I like that. You're well known in Silicon Valley as being a great mentor. You've been a great mentor to me and a great advisor to Lifograph, which I really appreciate.
You're very kind.
What makes a good mentor and what makes a good mentee? Because everyone has got to bring something to the table.
Right. Yeah, so I learned earlier in my career about mentorship, before it was called mentorship, I guess. But I had, long ago and far away, I worked for a guy who was just an extraordinarily brilliant individual who was unbelievably open to me as a peer, even though we were wildly different, right? And so I think a critical part of being a mentor is removing this, expert God, subordinate, person, orientation that a lot of senior, junior people have. You've got to be able to meet the person as peers and treat them as peers and equals so that you can open up, so everybody can open up and be open and honest. And then on the mentor side, one of the critical keys is to be able to listen and to help the mentee understand what they're not even seeing about their own situation. So it is, what you think of as sort of a psychological process. The biggest challenge for mentors is to avoid giving advice. And that's a risk, because mentors, they want to say, I've been there, I've done that, I know the answer, here's the answer, do this. Because almost never does that work, and frequently it's just wrong, because the world's different, and what you learned may not be right. The flip side, of course, for the mentee is the challenge of being open and honest in terms of outlining what the challenges are so that you can get good feedback, and then the challenge of working the sounding board relationship and trying to discover new ideas that are relevant.
I know you've been a successful entrepreneur, built companies, sold companies. What advice would you give to a new entrepreneur, up and coming, wanted to take the world by the horns?
Yeah, I mean, two big pieces of advice, include one, do not make the same mistakes that other people made. Make new mistakes. And part of that has to do with this tendency of entrepreneurs to be arrogant at some level and think they're the ones that have this new brilliant insight and idea, and not realize how much they can learn by being open and reaching out to other people. So, it's a challenge when you're passionate about something to be open to the possibility you're wrong, right? and so, the first piece of advice is make sure you reach out and find mentors, find people you can bounce ideas around, and keep being open to being open to continuously improving your vision, because almost certainly your initial vision is a little bit wrong. So that's really, really hard as an entrepreneur, because you're so passionate, you're afraid to let go of that spark. And then the second critical part about being an entrepreneur is figuring out how to build the right team. And it's just so hard to surround yourself with this right balance of people who both believe in the same vision at some level, but are in fact different from you. Your tendency is to want to bring in your roommate and another classmate, and that's your tendency to kind of work with like people. But it's extraordinary how much energy you can get in an organization if you get not just a diversity of skills, but a diversity of attitudes. As long as everybody believes in sort of the core vision, getting that diversity of perspective and attitudes as well as skills is really hard to do, but critically important.
Thank you so much for the advice. And this is a question that we always ask our guests, and that is, give us 3 things that people don't know about you.
3 things that people don't know about me.
Yes.
So one thing that is buried deep in my past is that when I was young, my favorite sport was curling. And there are a lot of people who don't even know what curling is, but I grew up in Chicago, and my grandfather founded the first curling club in Chicago. Curling is a big sport in Canada. Every Canadian knows what curling is. And it's a great sport. It's
an Olympic sport.
And finally it became an Olympic sport. Yay! And so that just means more people make fun of it, right? But it's a great sport. So that's something that not a lot of people out here in California really have any appreciate. And so the second thing that sort of pivotal in my life that I don't have much chance to talk about is that when I was young, my grandfather was an idol to me in so many ways. He was just an extraordinary individual. He studied law, he studied architecture, he built planes, he built houses. But by the time I knew him, he had retired and was a farmer. And so, my grandfather was a farmer. Okay, what was so special about that? Well, as I got to know him growing up, I found out that he was the founder of one of America's Fortune 100 companies. And he was the co-founder. He got together with two other guys, including the son of Drake in Chicago, who Drake was the guy who drilled the first oil well in America, and was the origin of the Rockefeller fortune. So that was the Drake family. So it was the son of Drake and my grandfather bumped into each other in Chicago, and with another guy, they started this company. And when I was young, I said, you started this company, how is it we're not rich, right? And so, and so when I was very young, I heard the first entrepreneur horror story, from my grandfather about how the three of them got together and they started this company and they ran out of money and they had this battle.
Typical story.
Right? And the guy who had the money, was the one who took it the rest of the way and whatever. So I learned at the knee of my grandfather long before I ever got to Silicon Valley, a classic entrepreneur horror story.
It happens all the time.
Little did I appreciate how often I would hear another such horror story.
Yeah.
And then I had the opportunity to do a stint on Wall Street and had the great opportunity to work with a guy who was my first mentor. And as I said, before we ever called people like that mentors. And so I had the great good fortune of working with a guy named Robert Rosa, who had been Undersecretary of Treasury for Kennedy and Johnson and was the mentor to a couple of chairmen of the Federal Reserve Bank. And so I had the opportunity to work with him and travel with him around the world and meet central bankers all over the planet and see how someone who was so powerful and so brilliant could be such a genuinely generous, nice, and human person. And so I try as much as I can, to model myself on his behavior and try whenever I can to pay it forward and try to give back to younger entrepreneurs whenever I can.
Well, you certainly succeeded.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill, for this interview. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dea. My pleasure.